I am finally feeling like I am back in the land of the living, and it is amazing how much knitting and how many mistakes you can make when you are not sick and not training for a 545-mile bike ride. I will see you on the other side. Greetings and welcome to the latest episode of Gary Knits, Gary Rides, a Craftivism podcast at the intersection of making things and doing good. My name is Gary. I'm a knitter and a crocheter, and for the past 6 years, I've been a cyclist and fundraiser for AIDS Lifecycle, a 7-day bike journey from San Francisco to Los Angeles, raising money for the life-saving work of the Los Angeles LGBT Center and the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. I may need to edit that since I'm not going to be writing anymore, although I will be fundraising. Anyway, welcome. You can find me on the socials at Gary Knits, Gary Rides on Instagram and over on Ravelry as Gary Knits and Rides. I hope you're doing well. I hope you are surviving this heat wave, which seems to have engulfed the better part of the United States and probably parts of Canada as well. Thankfully, one of the few good things about where we live is the relatively stable year-round temperature. So we have not suffered from the heat. It's warm, summertime warm, but not unbearably hot like many folks are experiencing across the country. So be safe if you are in one of those areas. Stay hydrated, stay indoors if you can. It's been a not busy 2 weeks. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff, but I haven't really felt busy with things that I don't want to be doing or feel like I have to be doing. So that's meant a lot of knitting. We're going to get into that and all the knitting fails that came along with all of the knitting. But in other things, I said I was feeling better. I had this, I think it was right after I recorded the last episode. I think I mentioned I wasn't feeling well. Had just been having terrible headaches and ended up seeing a doctor and getting a course of antibiotics for what I assume was a sinus infection. I've never really had one before, and my goodness, I totally empathize with anyone who deals with sinus headaches a lot, because that was really unpleasant and sort of limited my ability to feel like I wanted to do much of anything. But after 4+ weeks of being sick with that cold and then what I think was an infection, feeling much better. I went to the orthopedist to have my elbow/arm looked at again. They're very happy with the way it's healing. I joked on Instagram. They said, no restrictions on what you could do. Probably not going to be doing the rowing and the weightlifting part of my typical Orange Theory workout, but they have treadmill-only classes that I've been taking. But no restrictions, just kind of use your pain as a guide. But they were happy with the way the bone was filling back in. And then while I was feeling good, had to knock me down a couple pegs and say, given your age, we should probably, and the fact that you've just had a fracture, you should probably have a bone density scan. I didn't really care too much about the bone density scan, but it was the first time I had been given your aged by a doctor. So that didn't feel great either. But I'm glad that the bone is healing. I still have some pain. Basically, they said likely like sprained my wrist at the same time, because a lot of the pain is in this wrist when I twist or rotate. But give it another month, and if that hasn't resolved, then we'll start to look at sports medicine or physical therapy or something like that. So I'm going to take it easy. I have noticed certain things that cause pain and haven't braved yet going back to a full gym class. Although I did as I mentioned, I have gone back now for the treadmill only classes. which is a bit of a rude awakening as well after a month and a half off of not doing any exercise. So, but slowly getting back into my normal routine on that front, which that sounds great. Done a ton of knitting. Big news for me, at least, was that I finished writing up my Knit Stars pattern. So and I'll pop a picture of it here. This is the permission slip stitch hat and mitt set using yarn kits from Biscotte yarns. I have finally gotten the patterns graded and written up, sent off to a small team of testers, and they are working through those so that hopefully I can be well ahead of any of the deadlines I have from Knit Stars. So that was a challenge. It was a lot of trial and error, especially on grading the mitts, and hopefully there aren't any major problems with the pattern. Just on Knit Stars, I think there is going to be another window opening in terms of your ability to grab season 9, which is my season. They just wrapped up or I think it goes through this weekend, the wave 2 of the yarn kit sale. So if you already owned season 9, if you bought it in the early bird special or the last flash sale, you can buy the yarn kits from Biscotte Yarns. If not, when that closes down, then there will be, I think, a few other opportunities down the road, but the window for buying the season is going to be opening up here in a few weeks. There'll be links to all that down in the show notes below, along with everything else I mentioned. While I've got that in my head, I will pop up a QR code here, which if you're not watching this on your device, you can scan, and it'll take you right to the show notes with all the patterns and yarns and all the good stuff that you're interested in there. So that has been what has kept me occupied, and finishing it up is what has allowed me to attack all of these whips that I've been lingering for months and months and months and months. But I've also been able to finally start to catch up on much delayed chores and things around the house. So I did a big purge of my closet and got rid of a bunch of stuff that didn't fit anymore, or I just never wear because we've moved and we don't need the same clothes we needed a few years ago. And the other big purge I did was all of my cycling jerseys. So I took every one of the AIDS Lifecycle and AIDS Ride jerseys, so from the late 90s, early 2000s to the ones that I did in the last 6 years, took all of those and all of my sponsored jerseys, so all the jerseys that had people's names on them who had been donating, I put those and sorted them out. They all looked pretty good, and I found a company called Too Cool T-shirt Quilts. I'll link to that down below in the show notes as well. And they specialize in making quilts out of T-shirts, and they also do jerseys. So I packed all those. I think there were 32 of them or so, and shipped them off. And they're going to make some sort of cool quilt out of it. So once I get it back, I told them it's no rush, so I don't know how long it'll take. I'll definitely take a photo of it. So it's it's one of those things that I think will be nice, given my age, down the road, as I'm sitting in the senior living facility, to have that sort of as a memory blanket. And, I think it'll be big enough that we could, if we go out to watch movies in the park or something like that, we can use it as a picnic blanket, since it's made out of cycling jersey material. Like, it's all stain resistant and machine washable, so that'll be easy to clean up if we spill any food or anything on it. So I thought that was fun. It also cleared out a ton of closet space. So I'm just keeping basically 2 cycling outfits for my weekly rides around here. The rest of my cycling gear, I think we'll find a gear swap. So I know that AIDS Lifecycle, I think, has done these in the past, where they take gear that people don't need anymore, and at their big expo, have it as sort of like a garage sale where people can find a wind vest if they don't have a wind vest that is their size, etc. So I think I could do that. So that felt good to get those sort of purgy things out of the way. why don't we talk a little bit about this week's Craftivism ideas? Again, if you ever have anything that comes across your feed that is a cool project that people are working on to either raise money, raise awareness, a charity drive of some sort, please just shoot me a email at GaryKnitsGaryRides@gmail.com so that I can mention them here. So the I think 4 I have. One is one of my favorite makers outside of the fiber space. I've spoken about her before, but it's Molly from Optimistic Soap Co. I think a couple episodes ago, maybe I mentioned that she was doing soap of all of the different pride flags during Pride Month. In July, she is trying to raise $4,000 to support trans youth. So she's picked 2 charities that are local to her that provide resources and help to trans kids that are either homeless or low income, and are able to provide them resources and goods to help them continue to live on the streets or in difficult situations. So she is doing a raffle. For $10, you get a shot at 20 of her bars of soap, which is a value of like over $200. Her soaps are gorgeous, and she will, I think it's the Pride package, but she'll swap out flags or whatever she said. So head over to Optimistic Soap Co., buy your raffle tickets. I think there's like another week and a half or so left on the raffle, and let's see if we can help her get to her $4,000 goal to help trans youth. The other thing that I saw pop across my screen is Project Knitwell. I think I've mentioned them before as well. They're based in the DC metro area, and they work in sort of the wellness space and using knitting as a therapeutic and wellness tool. And they do that by teaching knitting at local hospitals and other community centers for folks who may be going through a rough time, just to teach them knitting as a way to maybe help with anxiety or whatever they need help with in the moment, but using knitting as a tool to provide that sort of wellness and well-being feeling. So they're looking for volunteers in the DC, Baltimore, Northern Virginia area to help teach people how to knit at these various facilities. So if you're in that area, and I know several of you are, go check out Project Knitwell and see if maybe you can share your expertise with someone who's a newbie trying to learn how to knit. Loose Ends Project I have mentioned before, but I want to keep this in front of folks who may not have heard of them. They have put together an amazing operation. I had a chance to chat with Jen, who's one of the founders of the Loose Ends Project this last week, and I'm going to get to meet her in person up in Seattle at Flock early in August. But what they do is they find projects that have been either left behind by someone who's passed away or abandoned by someone who can no longer complete them. And then they match those projects up with makers who have volunteered to help finish those projects, which can then be given back to the families, provide a sense of closure in the case where someone has passed, or allow that person who is no longer able to do the craft that they were doing to have that completed project that then they can pass on to someone else. It's an amazing organization. They've grown dramatically over the past couple of years since they've been founded, but I think they can always use a little boost of spreading the word, especially on the project side. So I think they have a ton of volunteers, and they've been able to match those people up with thousands of projects, but they have way more volunteers than they do projects, and I think that is something you just want to keep informing people of, because you never know. You might know someone who passed away who was a knitter, and their kids don't know what to do with all of mom's supplies and maybe finished projects. And you can reach out to the Loose Ends Project and find those projects a maker and get that circle completed. So that is the Loose Ends Project over on Instagram. Again, everything's going to be linked down below. The last one I wanted to mention, and you're going to hear a little bit more about this from me in the coming weeks. But it's a group called Friday Morning Charity. They are based over on Facebook. They have a Facebook group, and each quarter, it's a group of folks who each quarter work on a particular charity drive. So making hats for this organization, making scarves for this organization, making teddy bears for this other organization. And each quarter they pick a charity and they work on those. So if you love charity knitting, charity making, head over to their Facebook group, get signed up, so when the next one comes up, you're all set up over there and can help, provide tons of hats or scarves or teddy bears to whatever organization they are working for. So that is it for Craftivism this time around. Let's start talking about some knitting. As I mentioned, my big FO is the pattern this week, so it wasn't an actual project, although I have many versions of it that I was still knitting on up until the very last minute, just making sure my stitch counts and things like that were correct. But the big FO was getting that out the door to the testers, and like I said, hopefully there aren't any major snafus with it. I do find that is my least favorite part of the design process, is the writing it all, getting everything written down and formatting and all that stuff. And the tech editor, helps in that regard, but they're not there to actually format your work and, get it in a, logical pattern and things like that, by and large. Anyway, so that was my big FO, but I have a ton of whips, including some new projects that I don't think I've shown before. Let's start with maybe oldest first. So I have repicked up, and this is also going to be a tale of knitting fails. I mentioned that up at the top. Everything I touched over the last 2 weeks turned into some sort of fail. I don't know if that, do we blame the sickness? Do we blame my just excitement about being able to work on so many projects and just kind of getting lost in the moment and the momentum of things and not being able to read, which is what most of the issues ultimately ended up to be. I don't know what it was, but every one of these projects is going to have a little story about how I effed it up. So anyway, first one, this is living in my Bearded Pearl Harris tweed bag. I love this bag so much. Caleb, please make more so we can buy them. Anyway, so this is the Dahlias and Honey shawl by Corinne, who is I Knit You Not on Instagram. And this was a Crochetalong project. I can't even remember which one it was, if it was winter or I don't think it was spring. I think it was winter. But I had gotten started on it, and then the spring, got away from me, and so I had always wanted this to be a gift for my mom. If you recall, I gave her the shawl, Candace's Comfort Shawl, that was part of the Knit Stars Pro-Am. But I'd hoped that this would be a companion piece, because that's kind of a heavy shawl. This is going to be very light. But I had to put it down, and just now getting back to it. So this is Dahlias and Honey, and I am doing it in a Lola Bean Yarn Co. Black Label, 70% superwash merino, 30% silk. It was the Black Label. It was Prince and the Revolution, the beautiful ones. I've enjoyed working with it. I think it's going to be very nice, very light and airy. So I like the kind of fuzz and a little bit of sheen that the silk gives to the yarn. So I had been, I was probably about that far done with it the last time I perhaps showed this. And in the pattern, it has one of those instructions that I always find a little bit confusing. Had I read and looked at the row numbers that it referenced, I would have figured it out and saved myself some time. But it was one of these, you have like a 12-row thing, and you knit it, and then at the end it says repeat rows 1 through 12 twice. And but it says, rows 13 through 30, repeat rows 1 through 12 twice. I could have figured it out that it meant to do it 2 more times, but whenever I see twice, and had been away for a month, and I had like check marks, and it looked like I had 2 check marks by the thing, so I thought that meant maybe I had done it twice. I'm always a little like, does it mean the first one counts as 1 repeat and then another one, or do they want 2 more? I always find it helpful to say repeat twice more for a total of 3 times, so I just belt and suspender like how many things you're supposed to be doing. But anyway, I just picked it up, thought I had done the right amount, and forged ahead with the next section, which is this really easy, beautiful kind of, it's not feather and fan, but it's like a V-stitch, so it kind of creates that feather and fan look. Relative to the bobble sections of this pattern, it was much easier. The bobble sections have given me trouble from the get-go in terms of getting things lined up. Probably user error as well, but it was a really easy next section, and I just kind of flew through it. And I was looking at the rows, because I think the pattern has like 50 rows total, and I thought I was sort of at row like 36, and I was like, like this is like 2/3, supposed to be 2/3 done, and it was like maybe a little bit bigger than this, but not much bigger than where I am now. And I was like, this seems really, really small. And I have a finished version of this that I did not do, that one of my friends in our weekly Tuesday Zooms had done up in the yarns that were the kits for the when we were doing the Crochetalong, and she sent it to me. She's like, I'm not going to wear it. Why don't you have it? It's really pretty. But I took it out, and I was like, even if our gauge is different by a decent amount, like there's no way that mine should be this big and hers should be this big. So I went back to the pattern, and sure enough, realized that I needed to do 1 full more repeat of the whole bobble section. I'm about halfway through doing that, so I ripped it all out, and I guess I could have like just kept going and then kind of made it my own a little bit, but I certainly don't feel confident enough with crochet to like ever do that, although this is a relatively simple pattern in terms of shaping. But anyway, I ripped it all back, so it was like a full day's worth of crochet ripped back, and have now started the bead stitch or bobble section for the 3rd time, making it the 2nd repeat after I did it the first time. Anyway, but now I'm very confident about the next section. So I'm hoping Mom's birthday's late August, and I'm hoping that I can wrap this up by then and give it to her for her birthday. So Dahlias and Honey by I Knit You Not. The next thing that I'm working on is also a End AIDS not Crochetalong. This was a Knitalong project that got started in the spring, and I had gotten to a certain point and then kind of had to stop because everything was happening with training for the ride and Stitch Out Loud and all that stuff. This is the Bethel shawl by Cassie, who is Pine Needles and Poppies on Instagram. And this is a DK weight, kind of big, schlankety shawl that eventually will have a fringe on it. Let me get the right side to you. So, as you can see, it's pretty straightforward. It's a big, garter stitch V with the center spine, and then you have a section that is drop stitches, and then you have this big lace section, and then you kind of go back. So I'm on I think I only have like 8 or 9 more rows of it. So, but it's even if you stretch out the needles, it's still it's getting pretty large. And then it has this really cool fringe on it as well. So I think last time I showed this, I was definitely still in the garter stitch section. So I finished that up. This is being done in Royal Bee Yarn Co. out of Pacifica, California. Kelly dyed this colorway for the kits. It's called Gary's Guacamole. It is a non-superwash, 100% wool DK weight, as I mentioned before. And I think I'm on I started alternating skeins because it's naturally dyed, and Kelly definitely recommended that, so I went ahead and did it. And I think that is perhaps where some of the problems on how this became a knitting fail happened, because it's the first time I've ever done that, and I think I may have gotten confused when I had things at both ends and maybe did like a wrong side row on the right side, or like maybe did two right side rows. I think I messed it up maybe somewhere along the way in the lace section, and because I'm not a very prolific lace knitter, I can't read the lace. I can't read the lace as well as I can read my regular knitting. So anyway, what had happened was I got to the lace section, and somewhere I made a mistake. Like I said, it may have had to do with alternating the skeins and getting a wrong side row on the right side. It's a very simple lace. It's knit to yarn over together, or knit together yarn over. But somewhere along the way, it got out of kilter. I would try to adjust it to get it back. I ripped out a couple rows at one point. I did not use a lifeline, which someone has suggested. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I decided when I was more than halfway through, and I was like, something looks weird back in the past. I just decided it's going to have to be one of those horseback riding projects, meaning if you were riding by on the back of a horse, nobody's going to notice the errors that you made. And so that is going to be one of these type of projects. But I was sort of like fine with that, and got to the end of the lace section, and there's a stitch count. And so I said, I should, check my stitch count, make sure everything's okay. I don't know that it would have been critical for the design, but like to know. One side, spot on, like exactly the right number of stitches. Felt good about that. The other side was 8 stitches short. I have no idea how, because that would have meant like 4 times, like not increasing when I should have, because it was increases on either end. I don't know. I'm mystified at how it could have gotten so far off. Anyway, over the next 3 or so rows, I added those 8 stitches back in. We'll see if it starts to look like this down one of the edges. Maybe, hopefully it'll just all block out. But because it's such a schlankety big thing, I think it's going to get all wound up anyway, so I'm not going to sweat it too much. I love the yarn. It's going to be super cozy for shows at the Hollywood Bowl in the fall when it gets a little cool in the evening. So I'm fine with that. I think, like I said, I only have about 8 or 9 rows left. Only one of those has any sort of like pattern issue to it. So I think that will be a pretty quick finish. Hopefully, maybe this next week, and then I can move on to some new projects. So speaking of some new projects, I think Oh no, I have one more that was pre-existing. So these were all make along catch-up projects. So this was the Coasting Along sock make along that was started when I started the ride. The pattern was designed by Gabs and Che over at Slip Sis, and it was a mystery knit along for the week of the AIDS Lifecycle. So each day a clue came out. I came back and didn't really treat it as a mystery, and had decided that I was going to make the socks in the body of the socks, main color being this gray. I was going to use all Stitch Out Loud colors. So this was Asphalt from Yuriko Oki, and then I was going to use all of the different colors for the color work. So the pattern was written for sort of six minis or 6 scraps or contrasting colors. I had over 20, and so I just kind of went through and tweaked the pattern a little bit in terms of like how many things I did with each one, so I could try to incorporate as many of the colors from the Stitch Out Loud collection as possible. So started knitting, immediately reading comprehension 0, and misread got the cuff okay, the ribbing, which was clue number 1. Clue 2 was this sort of slip stitch pattern and totally misread it and put way too much of the gray between the colored stripes. Decided to keep moving and that I would just try to replicate that on the second sock. Got to this next section, which are these little baubles. Really enjoyed that. It was a looking. I did my normal, what I normally think of as my size, which is 72 stitches on a US 1. Knowing that the asphalt yarn was a little bit heavier, I thought, oh, maybe it'll be a little bigger than usual. I know because of the patterning and things in here, it was this first section was going to be big or look big, and then I think Gabs had said like with blocking it tightens back up, and I thought, well, if this is just a sort of slouchy Birkenstock sock for around the house, that's totally fine. They're not going to be my normal socks because it's a mix of superwash and non-superwash, so it's not a sock that's going to go in the wash machine anyway, so it'll just be kind of a special sock. So then I'm working on the heel flap, and I'm going, and I'm going, and I'm going, and I'm like, this thing is gigantic. And so I just just like this, I slipped it on, and the top part was not super duper loose. I mean, it was looser than a normal sock, but it wasn't super loose. But I was like, this heel flap is gigantic. It was going like halfway down the sole of my foot. I was like, something must be wrong. And so sure enough, I went back and looked at the heel flap instructions. It was a 4-row instruction. There's this one pattern row called the rib stitch that you do. And this should have been another clue. Is I was like, I don't know why she's calling this the rib stitch, because I mean, it's not ribbing, but like this doesn't look like a rib at all. 4 lines in the pattern. And then, it says repeat 17 times. What it says is repeat rows 3 and 4 17 times, not rows 1 through 4. So I was up to like the 13th or 14th repeat already. So I have, something like 28 extra rows or something in this pattern. So this is getting ripped out, and we will try this again. I had hoped to have a finished sock by this time. This was 2 weeks ago I started this. I had hoped to have a finished sock, and because of these other things that I've been working on, I haven't spent as much time on it. So I'm going to rip that out and start from scratch on the heel flap. Hopefully, that'll look a little bit more size right when I get to it. The other project that I have started, and this was just I just needed something that like didn't have any. What I thought I was getting was something that wasn't going to require a whole lot of thinking. That I could just like knit on the car, or if I like had a moment where I didn't want to like be trying to do the lace or counting any pattern, that I could just work on. It was going to be a charity hat. So I've made this hat before. I really like it. It's called the Bewind hat. It is by Yarn Hero. So Linnell at Yarn Hero is the designer, and this is in a Knit Picks Chroma worsted. I think it's worsted. Anyway, it's a very straightforward pattern, and I'd started it and then put it down for a while and then came back to it. And I don't know, at some point, it was a reading comprehension, so I picked it back up, and somehow the swirl wasn't lining up. It was off kilter, and so I went back and it's looked at how many I'd cast on and counted, and it seemed right, and so I kept going, and it just kept going the wrong way. So I would try to like compensate for it by trying to get back on track, and then it would just make it worse. And so I ripped it out, tried it again, got to the same point, and because you are twisting these two stitches to create this little rib, it's very easy to just knit those two together instead of doing a 1/1 twist. But I kept like looking back and like my cast down number is right. What I forgot to do is continue to read and realize that there was another instruction which I had completed at some point. Where you add a stitch, so you're working, an evenly a pattern repeat that has even numbers over an odd number of stitches. So you're always kind of like, you're working in the spiral anyway, but it just kind of accentuates the spiral and allows you to create these lines that go this way instead of just straight up. So I've ripped this out like a dozen times. It feels like, and now ripped it back, tried it again, ripped it back. So I think I have it now. I think I've solved the stitch count issue and just really have to focus on not knitting those two together. And because you get, it's one of these things you just get going in a rhythm, and the motion is the same, but you don't pull them off the needle. You knit into the other stitch to get the twist. So hopefully this will be a knit the rainbow hat at some point, assuming that I don't have to rip it out again. If I have to rip this out again, I'm definitely just ripping it all out and trying a new hat and just thinking that is the universe sending me a message that this yarn, this hat, this pattern are not to be done. So this is the Be Wind hat by Yarn Hero on Instagram. So those are the things that I have another new project. I told you there's a ton. So I wanted to do something for Flock. Flock is a fiber festival up in Seattle. This is the second year they're doing it. It was an amazing festival last year. Their very first year, they knocked the ball out of the park. It looks like it's even. I just was looking at the vendor list, and so excited. Some of my favorite people are going to be up there, and I'm looking forward to being up there and having a lot of fun. A friend of mine from our knit group, Zoom night on Tuesdays, she's flying out, and another woman from our Tuesday Zoom lives up in the area, so we'll see her. Nancy from Trilogy Yarns, who also Zooms with us, is gonna be there. The Fiber Hustle guys are going to be there. It's going to be a great show. I'm really looking forward to go up there. But I wanted to have something, if I could, something to wear. But last year it was like 90 degrees, so it was quite warm, even though the venue was relatively cool. I think this year it's in an air-conditioned venue, so that's probably not going to be as big a deal. But I didn't feel like I had time with all these other things to start something and finish something brand new. But then I had an idea. I watched Nicole at Professor Pearl, and she had I was catching up on YouTube episodes, and she did one with all of the little tiny scarves, so like the Sophie scarves and all the kind of permutations that have come out with like just little scarves. And just so happened at the time, just around the time that I was, hadn't even thought about this for Flock, but while we were in Montreal, Max the Knitter from Les Garçons had come out with this new pattern for this little scarf. It's called the 2-in-1 bandana. And when I went into the Les Garçons shop, I had the idea that I would get yarn to make one. Hadn't really put it together with Flock yet, but I got some. I showed it last time. I think some La Bien-Aimée. I think it's 100% silk. That's like a yellow and pink, but I didn't really think that was the vibe for me for Flock. And then I bought these two blues in their British 4-ply, so their fingering weight. It's Masham, and I don't have it with me. I can't remember if it's BFL Masham, maybe. Anyway, it's really woolly, but not scratchy or anything like that. It's just a really nice, light, but kind of definitely feels like wool. It's not superwash. So here's where I am on this. It's a little bandana. I mean, I would say a scarf. It's going to be symmetrical, just like increasing to a point at the center and then decreasing back down. But because of the way the stitches are done, it creates this little fold almost, and so it holds its shape in the fold. And so you can kind of wear it with one side out or the other side out. You could obviously keep it open and tie it that way. But I think this will be perfect. I think, one, it's the colors work with everything that I wear. I love this. So it's Louis' shade is the dark navy, and then this sort of, it's hard to describe because in certain lights it looks definitely gray. In this light, at least where I'm standing, it definitely has more blue, but there's also like a little green undertone. So I was like, it's almost like a very pale, like aqua-y color. It's really a beautiful color. It's called Abador's Water, and I think these two look great together. I love the little broken rib pattern. I finally have sort of sorted out the repetition, and so it's one of these things that I can with some stitch marker help, I can pretty much do it without looking at the pattern. So that'll be great for upcoming trips in the car. I think this will be good for that, or for some TV or YouTube watching knitting, because the counting, as long as I have my stitch marker, I'll know when to increase on this end, and hopefully be through the increases relatively shortly. So I've only got about 15 days or 20 days to flock, so I should probably make that a priority. The Bethel maybe can get put on hold, since it's going to be a while before I can wear that anyway this summer, and my mom's thing I have until after flock. So maybe the 2-in-1 bandana becomes the priority for the next week or so, to try to get at least to the halfway point on it. So next up on my list, I really want to try to get some of these things wrapped up, so that I can start some new projects that are a little bit bigger than just this little scarf. The one thing that is an absolute must get started on and hopefully get wrapped up before the end of the year is a much delayed housewarming gift for one of my dear friends. And I've talked about this before, but it's been a while since I showed it. So this is the Kurdock blanket. It's by my fellow knit star, Carol Feller. And this is going to be, so it's a blanket, I don't know what so 40 by 50 inches. So, bigger than a lap blanket, but not, bed sized. And it is definitely going to be the most ambitious project that I've ever worked on. I think it is probably nothing super technical. I think that most of the cabling and stuff is going to be pretty straightforward, and things that I've probably done individually before. I think the challenge to this project is going to be the management and keeping track of it. So there are something like, let's see, 2, 3. There's 6 cable charts. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So 18 panels, and they kind of mirror out from the center. So they're in a different order one way than the other. And of course, all the charts are of varying heights. So I think the biggest one is like a 36 row repeat, but then there's 12s and there's 6s. And then one of the panels is just a 1/1 right twist. What right twist or a left twist. And then there are, reverse stockinette stitches between each panel. And I really struggled for a while. It's on 4 or 5 different pages. I couldn't figure out how I was going to organize this and keep track of, where I was and which row of which cable motif, which row I was in, so that I was lining things up properly. Someone recommended Knit Companion, and so I went ahead and got that and learned all the ways to combine charts, and it's brilliant. It's in the paid version of Knit Companion. There's so much you can do in the free version, but to do the joining of the combining charts from multiple charts in the same pattern, you need the paid version. You got a free month of it, so I went in, walked through, learned how to do it. The issue was, one, it got to be a really, really wide chart, so it was going to be teeny tiny on the screen. Now you can zoom in and stuff, but kind of the nice thing about Knit Companion is being able to just kind of not futz around with it too much. And you can do the voice commands and things like that. But if you're zooming in, you have to keep zooming in, zooming out. Anyway, so there was that piece of it. As I mentioned, there are these 1/1 right cross and left crosses. Those are not on actual charts in the pattern because it's just 2 stitches. So it's just an instruction in the chart. And as a result, then you couldn't easily add those to your big, gigantic chart in Knit Companion. Yet I could create like a little 2-stitch segment, but then I had to do that 36 times up the row and paint it a different color. And then there were the channels of reverse stockinette that go between each of the motifs. That's 4 or 5 stitches in between each one of those things, which made it even wider if I truly wanted a chart where I could just sit there and read it across. So I just didn't think it was going to be a feasible solution to this. So what I ultimately did was I just kind of cut out the individual cable charts and pasted them up on a single gigantic thing. So this is not going to be taken on the car kind of knitting. And each one of them got a color which corresponds with a color of stitch marker. So at the beginning and ending of each of the sections has a different colored stitch marker. So I know, for example, if I hit the pink marker, I need to be working on cable A. Vice versa for everything, including the right crosses and left crosses. And then what I did was on each of the individual little charts, I labeled what the corresponding rows would be on the big 36 row chart. So that basically all I need to keep track of with my little row counter that has the chain is which row I'm on the big chart. So if I'm on row 13 on the big chart, I know that's the equivalent of a row 1 on cable E and a row 1 on all of them, essentially. But some of the 12 ones, when you get up north of 6, then they start to, the numbers start to change. So I'll know that if I pick a number, I can find where I am on each of the charts, and then hopefully with the color coding, if I stop, I will be able to determine exactly where I am. All that requires me to do is make sure that I'm advancing that little chain row counter for the big chart. So I'm looking forward to getting starting this. I had thought about casting on this past week once I kind of sorted this all out. I've got all my stitch markers pulled aside, but I decided I really wanted to wrap up one other thing before I started something new. So this is going to be a long-term project. It's obviously very quickly going to get and it's too complicated to be in the car with something that has a zillion little stitch markers in it. That seems like a recipe for disaster. So this is definitely going to be a sitting at home, probably not watching TV except for the very beginning, which has a 2-inch border around it. But unless I start to really get comfortable with just kind of the flow of things, it's probably going to be okay, let's take a couple hours, throw on some relaxing music, and just work on this thing and concentrate on the cables. It is being done in this pale gray. It is from Plymouth Yarn. It's called Quaker Hill. It is 50% Highland wool, 50% alpaca. My friend who picked out the pattern, she picked out the yarn. It's very, very soft. It's alpaca, so it sheds, and I imagine it's going to have a tendency to grow as well. But it's going to be a nice cuddly blanket. So I think that it's not a garment. So I'm less concerned about the stretching out from the alpaca. But it's very nice wool, and I swatched already, so we're good to go. As soon as I wrap up one of these projects. So maybe this little hat, maybe I can finish that up and then feel good about starting something new. So that's it all on the making side. It has been a quiet couple of weeks. On the acquisition side, one second. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. I was saying it has been a relatively quiet couple weeks on the acquisitions front. I don't think that there's been any yarn delivered to the house, and I don't think there's been any yarn ordered. So I don't know if there is any yarn coming except for my monthly Woolens and Nosh sock yarn subscription. But I keep forgetting to mention this, and I wanted to do it now. Earlier, I think it was in the spring. I feel like it happened during like the April to May time period. It was definitely something I got wrapped up before the bike ride. But I participated in a sock swap that was run by Rachel at Pearls and Polish. If you're not familiar, she has a YouTube channel up here. She is a prolific sock knitter. If I could be half as quick as she is with the sock knitting, I would be a very, very happy man. She's participating right now in Crazy Sock Ladies, summer sock camp, and has some super crazy ambitious goals in terms of the number of even shorty socks. She's flying through these things. So she has some amazing socks, always has some beautiful socks. And so she organized this sock swap where basically you said you wanted to participate, and there were rules in terms of like what you were going to commit to swapping, and then she paired you up with someone from around the world. If you wanted to keep it local to save on shipping, you could do that. I just said whoever, wherever. And so I got paired up with a woman in Canberra, Australia. On Instagram, she's Laura Lou Designs. I'll link to her down below. She is a pattern designer as well as a knitter, and we got paired up. It was really fun to, learn a little bit about her and her knitting life and all that. And then we swapped some yarn and goodies. So I keep forgetting to show it because it came I think right after I got back from the ride. But I got this I was excited that it was someone from another country because I figured it was going to be yarn that I hadn't heard of. Not that someone in the U.S. couldn't give me yarn I hadn't heard of, because I have a lot, but not all of it. So this is called Black Wattle Yarn and Fiber. And the color is called Desert Rains. It's absolutely gorgeous. It is 75-25 superwash merino and nylon. And I made, it doesn't say where it's from, but it's .au web address, so it is a local yarn, and she said it was the local yarn. So paired up with this, she gave me a mini from a different dyer or yarn company. It's Fibersmith Fine Cloth and Yarn, and this is their 4-ply, which is an 85-15 in this beautiful natural color. So these are definitely going to be turned into a pair of socks at some point. And I have so much self-striping, so maybe, once I get rolling on socks, I will take a break from the self-striping and do one in more of a variegated. And she also sent some little goodies. There was a beautiful postcard of Canberra. This little stitch marker, which is a little hank of yarn on a hexagon, and I love the hexagon shapes. And there was another one in there that now has disappeared into my stitch marker bowl. And then she sent some treats, some really delicious cookies called Tim Tams, chocolate covered wafer. They're long gone. I mean, they got opened like immediately, and my husband loves chocolate, and I had to sort of hide them away once we opened them in the back of the refrigerator, so he didn't get them all super quickly. But those were delicious as well. So thank you, Laura, for the amazing yarn from Australia, and it was a pleasure to get to meet you. And thank you, Rachel, for putting this together. I hope you do it again next year, because it was a really, really fun project. But aside from that, no yarn has made its way into the house this week. I mentioned that I'd done a purge of my closet and my cycling jerseys. What I have yet to do is do another run at the yarn. I think one of the reasons why I am trying to speed ahead and sort of on some of these projects just live with the knitting mistakes and move on is because in the purging of my closet, that is where I keep all of my yarn kits. So those are projects that have already been kitted up, signed a pattern. I don't count them as stash, but there are lots of them. And so I was really sort of like, okay, let's finish up these projects because I want to get going on some of these and start to help work down the stash. So hopefully, in the next couple weeks, one or more of these will get finished. I can start on the Kurduck blanket, and then maybe pick up one of more of my. Well, actually, I know the next thing I need to do. My sister-in-law ordered a skein of the OtterPop Disco self-striping socks from Stitch Out Loud. It was very funny because she was like, "You say sock set? Does that mean you get socks?" And I said, "No." She's not a knitter. I said, "No, that means that you get a little extra mini skein for the heels and toes. You still have to have the socks made." So I volunteered to make her a pair of socks. And when she was visiting here while we were traveling, we did her whole foot measurement thing, so I can plug it into Kate Atherley's formulas from her book and hopefully get a very nice fitting pair of rainbow striped socks for her. So that's going to be the next project that goes on my needles, and I think we'll try to do those 2 at a time so that when we're done, we're done. So that is it for this episode. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your week to spend it with me. Please drop a comment down below. I would love to hear from you. If you are not a subscriber, I would love to have you as a subscriber so we can continue to grow this community. So hit the subscribe and like button. Have a great next couple of weeks. I will see you. Will it be August? Maybe it'll be August. I will see you then. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.